What's up, Rube? It's Little Big Robots back with a video here. Been doing a lot of talky videos lately, but this has been fun. So the other day, I wanted to go into the 118 group on Facebook, which is a fantastic group. It's one of the only good reasons to go to Facebook. So if you're over there and you're a 118 toy fan, or even if you're just a toy fan, check out the 118 scale toy group. It's a really nice group, really, really active, really fun. And I wanted to put a little note in there that I found this character here, which is the avatar. He's like the actor, the character, and he was like a hoorah type of Marine type guy. And I wanted to put that this guy had gone on sale. I think I saw it, I can't remember, on Amazon or something like that, and he was really cheap. And I went over there and I said, hey, this is on sale. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but this should be 118 scale, but of course it says 7-inch scale on the package and on the description. I know what that means, but they were quick to kind of correct me and say, well, that just means that it's referring to the 7-inch scale because the alien creatures in this line are 7 inches tall. Mind-boggling. And I said, no, I know that, but I'm just verifying that this guy's 118. I forgot. I didn't have his measurements. I had him put up somewhere. I said, oh yeah, cool. So if you go to McFarlane's website, and they are by no means the only ones who do this. They're one of I'd say most toy groups now do this, that I come across, especially action figures. He's listed as 7-inch scale. Now, when you measure him, of course, he's not 7 inches, and you'll forgive me for not using metric. I'm still getting better at that. He's, 3 and 4 inches, whatever. And so wouldn't that be a 4-inch scale or 3.75? That's 118 scale. That's basically a 118 scale figure. They don't list that on McFarlane's website anywhere. They don't list a ratio like that anywhere on McFarlane's. Instead, what they're doing, they're just saying because the Avatar aliens are 7 inches tall, they're toys, even though none of them are exactly 7 inches, we're going to call it a 7-inch scale. Well, guess what? This is a 7-inch scale, according to McFarlane, and as well as this. So this is a normal human size, and this is so these are both the same scale, according to McFarlane. So real quick, I thought I would define scale just according to the the definition or whatever. It's basically the relative size or extent of something, relative being the key word there, or it is a ratio of size. That was a good way to put it. I kept thinking of a good way to place, say it, but as scale, if you see something that says something like 7-inch scale or 28 millimeter scale or epic scale or heroic scale, those are not scales in the strictest definition. Those are keywords or terms that refer to a scale, kind of like saying, sport. That's referring to a sport, but the more specific way to put it would be football or basketball or whatever, right? So the term they're using in this case is 7-inch scale. That's not a scale. A scale is always a 1/another number. And what that means is the 1 is the real life item or the item that the toy represents or the item represents. / how many of the items that you hold there, how many items of that toy would it need to take to equal the relative size or the general size of the item in real life, if that makes sense. I'm sure most or all of you know this, but I thought I'd make the video just to show, if it wasn't so frustrating, it would be hilarious. It's kind of silly how they do this. And not only that, but there's no consistency. Now, why is this important? If you're a collector who tends to collect a single line, for example, I was collecting McFarlane's 7-inch line. I hate even saying that, but see the habit there. I was collecting this line when it came out and after, and it's just a really fun action figure line. I like how solid they are. I'll probably end up selling most of them, but it's really fun. If that's all I collected, and let's say they called that a 7-inch line, that's cool. But us toy collectors, as you can see from my shelf, and as you can see from like the 118 group, even people who are really embedded in a very specific hobby like Warhammer or with the 118 scale Joy Toy Warhammer figs, even those people tend to have some cross-pollination from other toy lines, or they will express an interest in cross-pollination. Pollination. Would that be pollination? Anyway, so for example, if I wanted to use this 118 fig with my other 118 figs, I'd want to know if that toy line matches mine, just for ease of use. So there are basically three kind of ways to use scale, or to kind of how you will utilize scale in your collectible collection person life. The worst way, the kind of number one worst way of these three ways, is basically when you just have to do a visual comparison. So I have some examples here that I wanted to show you that I've actually had to do this with, and it's kind of interesting. This is a Archcore. Look, I got to do the YouTuber hand. This is an Archcore figure. Archcore. Somebody suggested this to me one time. I said, yeah, they look cool, but they're so expensive. And what I've found as I've started messing with them is they're really fun. I've got one kind of vehicle, and then I've got some of like their fortification stuff up there. Really, to me, this shines the best with the fortification stuff. The vehicles are often kind of unwieldy and large. Very cool, don't get me wrong, and you can often incorporate them into the fortification stuff. But really, these guys for me were just a fun Space Marine-like thing. Now, on their packaging, this is made by the Acid Rain creators. I forget their name. Anyway, it says 1/35th scale, so I know this is 1/35th scale. Now, does that mean it is, excuse me, exactly the same as every other 1/35th scale? Yes, because the creator of any IP is setting the size, weight, color, or whatever of the characters in the IP. So, for example, if this is 1/35th scale, but another guy that was 1/35th was much smaller, they're both 1/35th scale. It's just that the creators are saying, here's the relative size, here's the sizes of these characters. That doesn't mean that all creators are equally good at presenting that scale or representing that scale, but they, so that's 1/35th. Well, this is the hardest way, or this is the worst way to have to compare or to know if another scale works with your current scale, and that's just to buy the other scale. In this case, it's a Mega Construx figure. Mega Construx is roughly around 130 something, and then I just had to literally compare them. So as you can see there, about the same. Actually, the guy, the Commandant looking guy, whatever his name here is, looks a little bit taller in a way than the Space Marine guy, which, in a lot of lore and stuff, that would not be the case. The Space Marine guy would be much more of a hulking brute. So, for example, when you get a Mega Construx line, it does not mention scale anywhere on there. I'm not sure if Mega Construx mentions a scale or says Mega Construx scale or what. I don't know. Brick companies often don't have scale at all because of the proportions are off, but this Mega Construx looks pretty good and works pretty well. They're both kind of cartoony looking, so these two work well together. But I had to purchase both of these. I had to get them in person and do that. Now, of course, I can ask people and stuff, but to know if it really works, you really need to see it. So, but that's the worst way to figure out scale. The second worst way, but still a little bit better, is the method of using the company's terminology that they have placed on the scale. So, for example, Marvel Legends says we are 6-inch scale. Now, that's referring to their 6-inch scale. So I can say, okay, cool. Well, if I go buy any other 6-inch scale character, it'll match up to Marvel Legends. That's absolutely not true. Because 6-inch doesn't refer to an actual scale. Like, for example, this is roughly a 112, 111 something 6-inch scale character. I know because I can compare it to the others, and I don't know if the package when I bought it was dirt cheap. I just picked it up for some clearance sale somewhere. I don't even know who this is, but I believe it mentioned the scale. But if not, I can compare it using using the third worst option to just compare it next to my other 1/6 scale or 112 scale characters, 111 scale characters, or I can use the terminology on the package. So if this character said 1/6 scale, I'm sorry, it said 6-inch scale, and then my Marvel Legends character said 6-inch scale, I could be relatively or sort of at ease knowing that they'll match up. But if as I just showed you, This is 7-inch scale, the term. This is 7-inch scale, which actually works, these two together. But then this is 7-inch scale. But that's what it says on the site. So if you're a kid or a new collector or you're buying a gift for somebody, this is ridiculous. So comparing the two is worse because you've got to have the two physically in comparison there. So the second worst is using the terminology the companies use, which is all over the place. So you might see 6-inch scale represented one way in this company and 6-inch scale in a different one. You can even just Google what scale is blank, and you'll find Reddit discussions, fan forums and stuff, all of them being confused about what it is in some way, saying, well, that's because 6 inches means 1 foot is 6 inches. 1 foot is 1 inch. So if a guy's 6 foot tall, he's going to be 6 inches in toy form, if the character is. But people say, no, that's not. It's because the average person is 6 foot tall, which is not true. Average, according to what country or region of the world, what comic book, is it on the Avatar world where they're 12 foot tall or whatever? So none of those work. All that works and that you can guarantee is the 1/number. That's the only one. Somebody said it really well and said averages mean nothing. All that matters is that number. And companies don't often, or if ever, a lot of them don't ever put an actual scale on it. There's reasons for that. We'll get into it. Bear in mind that this looks like it could go with this, right? This is a Star Wars character. This is Warhammer. About the same height, right? But of course, this is what they would refer to as probably a 6-inch character. 112, because he is a taller person. So if these are relatively the same scale, then that is actually pretty accurate. But if you didn't know, and they were both called 7-inch scale, or this was called 6-inch scale, but this is called 7, and you put them together, you're like, but they're the same height. This is why terminology for scales does not work. We need companies to place scales, if they can, with a caveat, which I'll get to on their packaging. The easiest way to identify, let me show you this. This was a lot of fun. The easiest way to do scale, I think, is to have a package. Say I bought this entry grade. This is one of my favorite model kits of all time. It's $10. You can give this to a 6-year-old and they'll assemble it themselves. What a great way to put people into Gundam. In the model that comes out is really good. But anyway, you can see on right there, it's 141 and 144 scale. That is a really common scale for what they call high grade. So in a way, they have a scale called high grade. They can say high grade scale technically, but that's referring generally to 1 and 144 scale because that's their most common. That's their scale that they use for high grade. But you'll never see them say, yeah, that's a high grade scale kit, and then not have the 1 and 144 / on there. There are a few kits that they'll have that'll call no grade or whatever, just kind of kits that stand on their own or whatever. So that does happen, and for other reasons that we'll talk to when I talk about that caveat. But for the most part, Bandai and Gunpla is fantastic because everything they put a scale on. Now, I really wanted some tanks with this guy, and I was looking around and I was like, man, that sucks. Here's some Shermans. This is made from Revell, which is known often as the kit that your grandmother gave you when you stayed at her house in the summer. Go at the corner store and get a Revell kit. Some are kind of cheap, some are really good kits, but this, I was like, perfect. It's got a little Jeep, a little carrier, and a little Sherman tank. It actually has 2 of each of these in this. It was like $12, and I look on the package, look at that. 1 and 144 scale. So those two go together. Now, that does not guarantee that these look great together, but this is the easiest way from a distance without having to purchase it first, without having to compare them side by side, to know that according at least to the people who made the model kits and to the people who created the lore, that these generally are the same size. So a human in this world that is that big would be a human in this world that is that big. That is generally how it's known. Now, the caveat I'm talking about is that there are certain characters, like say what they call super deformed. I don't like that term, but they call them super deformed SD model kits, which have like a bobblehead. Let's say if you're a bobblehead company, let's say you're what's that company that makes the pop things, the big headed things that you see everywhere in the mall and stuff like that. those don't need a scale necessarily because they're kind of a one-off funny thing. They don't, maybe they're not meant to represent anything in real life. They're just supposed to be a cartoon. But I would argue that even then, when you have multiples of model kits or toys in that line, you could have a scale because those Funko Pops are all generally about the same size. They all have about the same footprint. They come in the same size packages a lot. So you could say that is, let's say, Funko scale with the big head or whatever. So, but those are the one-off kind of things that you're not necessarily going to see. I believe B-Duck, which is one of my favorite things of all time, is a non-scaled. I'd have to look at the package again, but let's say it's non-scaled because that's just a one-off toy. B-Duck is like Hello Kitty, and they kind of rent out or lease out their IP to toy makers, clothes makers, and stuff, just like Hello Kitty. So, or even just like Marvel or whatever. So you'll see those characters on like straws and cups and, and trash bags or whatever, sheets. And in this case, this was a one-off of a model kit, I believe, that this model kit company that makes other model kits made for B-Duck. So I don't think it has a scale. What is the scale of a duck? So it depends. I say it's close to 1-to-1 scale because the rubber duck is about that big. So there are a lot of really, really interesting ways to play with scale, but in general, when you're a toy collector or you're a toy, I like to do custom toys. I'm getting ready to create, I wanted to create a 160 scale army, which is people are about like that big, and play Space Marines with it, play Warhammer with it. I have 3 or 4 toys that I've sourcing. They're all marked as 160 or are known as 160, between 160 and 174. So I've got some idea of what I want to make, but I had to go and research certain toys and say, what scale is that? And somebody's figured out the math and kind of, somebody's put them together and done all the homework for me so that I know that the 3 or 4 toy lines I'm using for this 160 scale, 174-ish scale army will all kind of look good together. That's done a lot of the work for me. But if these companies had put a scale on there, then we would have a better idea. Now, like I said, not all of them are really perfectly suited for it because, for example, if you look at the Micro Squadron stuff, which is a fantastic line of like small ships and stuff from Star Wars, you'll see they recently released, I think, the Ghost. It's real big, but they have like the Millennium Falcon and AT-ATs and stuff like that. Those are not one-to-one recreations of what you see on the screen. They're a little bit exaggerated or short. They're not as big necessarily as you would see on the screen in some cases. In some cases, they're pretty accurate. So they need to fudge it a little bit. And so in something like that, I could see them not necessarily having a scale announcement on the toy set. But I could see them also having a scale and saying 170/74 or something, just to be cool, because I believe that toy companies tend to want to have these terms for their scale so that it's kind of generic and kind of foggy, so that people, if they see 172 on a box, they think, I can't buy that because it won't go along with my current toy line. When in fact, maybe you could fudge it a little bit, maybe it would. So I understand why they don't always do it. But I think that when you get into the collectibles market, especially the more expensive market, like these Joy Toys, these are all marked 125th. Hexagear is marked 124th. Most of what I like is marked somehow as officially recognized as a certain scale. In that market of more expensive, higher priced items, we should have a scale on the box. I thought you might want to see this. This was pretty cool little thing I just kind of crafted real quick. I'll probably need to make a better version of it. It's got cat hair on it, of course. This is just a piece of foam core. And what I have done is literally just shown here from 1 in 144 scale, which is about as small as they ever go. That's a normal kind of a human. That's one of the characters there. And then 100 scale. This is generally 160 to 174 scale, which is like Regio, stuff like that. This is the 135-ish scale. This is 124 and 125th scale. This goes up into 118 scale, and then this is what that you'll see Marvel Legends describe as 6-inch scale, but it's really about 111, 112, whatever. If I measure her right now, which I did earlier, she is 6 feet tall. Now, I don't know if Napita Luongo, whatever her name is that tall in real life. I don't know that she is, but she's not wearing heels. And if she is, she's quite a tall actress, which makes sense because she's an absolute goddess. But anyway, I don't know that that's accurate. So again, some companies tend to skew a little larger and some a little bit smaller. But to be completely vague about it and to say this is 6-inch scale is ridiculous. It'd be much smarter, I think, to say something like this is Marvel's scale or something. Then at least people know when they hear that. But when you have a company that is this massive, Hasbro doing this many of these scale toys, there's enough people in that market that it's not really a mystery about what size these are. We all know that. It's about 110, 112, 111, something like that. 118, again, is a really common scale. And I use this to I'm going to start using it to illustrate if a character would work with a certain line. You see, so like this is 7-inch guy here, or 7, whatever scale, that'd be 110 or whatever, 9. Alongside her, you can see he doesn't work with quote unquote 6-inch scale. So I thought this would be a fun little guide to use on videos and for myself, and just to kind of illustrate scale. So to sum up, long story short, companies should be doing scales on their boxes if they can. If it's a non-scale thing, or if they want to use a scale at all, if you want to use the term for your scale, heroic scale or whatever, at least put that on the box somewhere. What we're running into here is a fragmented batch of companies that, yes, you can be embedded in only one company and really be only invested in one company and really, really understand the scale of that company. I'm completely cool with that. But I have not yet really met a single collector and I want to say this, like, even people who collect only one scale, like say 1/18 Joy Toys, when they start to actually make, let's say, dioramas or large collections, let's say they need an army builder, meaning a character or a cheap figure that they can buy a bunch of really cheaply and put them up everywhere. If they need that kind of a thing, they want to know what scale works with what or what line works with what. And if, excuse me, if companies at least would put an attempt of some scale on their box or on their site or something, or at least tried to explain it really well, I think we'd all have a really, really much easier time. For me personally, I look for that scale. I'm used to model kits. They almost always have a scale, so it's easier to identify in a model kit, and they tend to be a more realistic representation of the real life item. That's the whole kind of appeal of model kits. But I would like to see it in everything, on chap-made toys, especially on McFarlane's horrible stuff. But then again, they use those horrible little stands in McFarlane, so I don't think they're going to change anytime soon. But I want to see companies recognize not just the collector of their toy line, but the possibility that their toy line can be used alongside other lines as well. So let me know what you think. Interesting but frustrating topic. Just remember, if somebody uses a term for a scale, that's not a scale. That is a term for a scale. So then you still have to go the extra step to figure out what scale they're referring to. If you already know, you already know. But I'm talking about for people who don't know, for people who want to explore their lines, this is a really, really important thing. So thanks for listening, everybody. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.